Mo the Hero. Sorry I haven't recorded and put nothing out there recently. I've just been going for a bit of a challenging time, trying to get my health back into check. So I've taken a bit of time out from doing any YouTube videos, but I'm back and I'm trying to put together as much content together as possible in order to entertain you guys and also to get the message out about people who are solved and unsolved cases. But this one is an unsolved case, and this unsolved case is a young lady or young girl who is just 7 years old, and her name is Christine Vivian Butcher. Now this murder took place about, I think it was about 40 years ago, probably 70 years ago, in 1951. Now, the important aspect about this, which I'll just want to just briefly speak about, Christine, I'm going to refer to her as Christine, took place in a wealthy part of the UK in Windsor, which is in Berkshire. Now, Windsor is obviously where Windsor Castle, for those that don't know, Windsor Castle is where the Queen lives with obviously her family. But she's got a place in Buckingham Palace in London, which is a working residence, but she also got a getaway, which is Balmoral, and one in Windsor, which is just on the outskirts of actual London. Now, there's nothing, this is really quite emotional for me to research, and it has made me, it's upset me and affected my mental health quite a bit, to think about this young girl being murdered and knowing that this person is out there still and has not been caught. So I'm going to put together as much content as I can and make it as clear as I can, and I hope you guys might be able to find a way we can solve this. But it's nothing worse than a young girl being murdered for something that she loves doing, and I'll go into that a bit more in depth. So let me just tell you roughly what Windsor Castle is like. Windsor Castle was built in 1070 and is where the kings and queens are buried and where they live. So you got people like the Queen, as I said, lives there. You got Prince Philip, who recently passed away. He's buried there. The Queen's dad, who is George IV, and the Queen Mother is also buried there. And you also got Queen Charlotte, who's one of the queens from the 17th century. And also got Queen Margaret, Princess Margaret, who's the Queen's sister. She's also buried there. So this getaway, it's a small kind of town just on the outskirts of near Dutchett and also near Eton. And if you don't know, Eton's a public school, or private school, should say, where the wealthy go, kings and prime ministers go there in order to be educated from when they hit a certain age, normally about 11 upwards. That's where they make connections and where they also... Windsor sits on around 13,000 acres. Yes, 13,000 acres, and majority of it is public domain or public access, so you can walk around actual Windsor. And the other part of it, the guy who built it was called William the Conqueror. Now, if you don't know who William the Conqueror is, he's the one who built the Tower of London. Now, if you don't know the Tower of London, then that is a fortress in London where everybody who is a tourist and anybody who comes to the UK goes and visits, and that's in London. So it's got a bit of history. It goes back where it was originally a fortress. Anyway, moving forward, Christine was a 17-year-old, lovely little girl. She was so happy. She got some amazing news. A celebrity was coming to Windsor. Not the Queen, a celebrity. I know the Queen is a celebrity, but this is a celebrity. Now, this celebrity came from America. And remember, this is 1951. And she was so happy. She got so excited. Now, the celebrity was called, he was a boxer, actually, a boxer called Sugar Ray Robinson. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson was one of the most prolific, or one of the toughest fighters out that we've ever seen. He achieved such a status that a 7-year-old white girl wanted to see a black man in the 1950s, because she said, apparently she was one of her idols and she wanted to meet and show her doll to Sugar Ray. Robinson was here to fight a English fighter called Rudolph Turpin, which went ahead, and if you want to see the actual footage, I'll leave the link in below of the fight, which lasts 15 rounds, and I'm going to do a spoiler here. It was Turpin who ended up winning. But at the end, they both hugged and they said they were both brilliant fighters. So obviously, the idea of this young girl wanting to see this American boxer was something which is really something synonymous, because it was a landmarking situation, because Sugar Ray wanted to come to Windsor because he wanted to stay in Windsor, because he wanted to train in Windsor away from London. Prioritize, he can get a bit more focus on his training. And I want to speak about Christine. Christine was reported to be a lovely, lively young girl. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone in Windsor. It was at that time, it was a very small town, so everybody knew everybody. And she would have went to a local school. I couldn't find what school she went to. There's not much about her, to be fair, which I was very surprised about. And even when I'm looking for the footage there was footage of her in a crowd, but I couldn't find it no matter how much I searched. So she didn't have a care in the world. She was starstruck when she found out that Sugar Ray was coming to London. She was just over the moon. And it is reported that she begged the mum to come and see this fighter, who was this American. Sugar Ray was instructed into the Boxers Hall of Fame in 1990. Now, the important thing about Sugar Ray is that he had 200 fights. And 173 he won, and 109 was a knockout, which is pretty high. And he also lost 19 out of the 200, which is pretty good. Obviously, when Sugar Ray came, it was really something special, as I mentioned earlier. And apparently, Christine was so excited, she was mind blown that this guy was coming, this athlete, this boxer, was coming to Windsor, just up the road from her. So she was just so excited. She begged the mum, can we go and see her? She would want to go and visit, to go and see Sugar Ray. And the mum was just over the moon. Obviously, was happy for the mum, obviously, to go and see Sugar Ray. But because in them days, to see someone on the silver screen, that's what it's called. You know, from Gene Kelly to Freddie Astaire to Ella Fitzgerald, all these massive stars, and to have one in your actual town was something synonymous. So she was so over the moon. She begged the mum to go, and she wanted to show Sugar Ray her actual dolly, which she had, which I'll leave the name across here because I don't really agree with this dolly, but anyway, I won't go there. So she wanted to show Sugar Ray her dolly because she loves this dolly. So around 3:30, her mother waved Christine goodbye and go and have a good time. Now, she wasn't going very far, and her mum saw her walking off into the distance. But unfortunately, Christine never made it to the hotel where Sugar Ray was staying, and she never made it to Windsor, and that was the last time she was seen alive. Windsor wasn't like how it is today. In them days, you could leave the doors open, you could let your kids play on the street, walk around the corner to be friends. Two little girls could go out to different towns and mix and be outside, go to the local department store or convenience store, I should say, and without fear or threat, because everybody knew everybody. It wasn't like it is today where, you know, some random stranger could just drive in and then drive back out. In them days, you did have cars, but if a car was known driving into Windsor, everyone would know that the person's not local. So obviously all eyes would be on that person. And normally law enforcement will be informed if there's someone acting really suspicious. Speak roughly about what happened and when obviously Sugar Ray's dead, the amount of people that turned up, because this is important to why and how she obviously got lost and where she disappeared to. So when Sugar Ray appeared, there was roughly over 10,000 people that came to see Sugar Ray externally coming into Windsor. And there was 24,000 people living in Windsor at that time as well. So we're looking about, 35,000 people roughly that descended on Windsor to a place called the Star and Garter Hotel, which is in the middle of Windsor, overlooking Windsor Castle. So Christine was found 2 days later at a place called Stephen Meadows, which is just on the outskirts of Windsor. It was in Windsor Home Park, which leads up to, which you see here, which leads up to the actual gates of Windsor. Her body was roughly a mile away from where she lived. So again, as I said, Windsor's not very big in the town centre is not very big. She was found laid with a black doll, which is the Piccaninny doll, which she brought to go and show to Sugar Ray because she wanted to say, look, I'm a little white girl and I love my doll, which Sugar Ray would know that not many people have that doll who are are white in them days. So she wanted to really give Sugar Ray this doll and say, look, this is my doll, and for him to really recognize and to see her, she had that in her mind. So they found her, and they found her laying next to this doll with the bag of sweets that she was actually eating. Now, she was strangled by something called a blue Ghanaian Macintosh, which is like a coat, but with the bands. I put a picture up with the bands, but that band, which is like the belt, was tightened around her neck and then which suffocated and killed her. The other thing which was said was there was abrasions on parts of her face and arms, and according to the post-mortem, or the person who done the actual forensics on that day, said that she was killed at the scene. She wasn't killed somewhere else and dumped there. She was killed at the scene because parts of the grass was tied up within the actual knot that was tied around poor Christine's neck. So more than likely she was killed, and that's what she was taken there, and she was murdered. There's no talk about whether she was sexually assaulted or was sexually motivated. I don't know. I couldn't find nothing about it. I'm telling you, there was literally nothing about this poor young girl. There was nothing about it out there whatsoever. There's no videos. I think this is the only video I've seen. What I'm doing, so I wanted to put it out there. But please share it, and I'm not sharing it from my YouTube channel, but I want to share it because I want people to know about this young girl that was murdered in Windsor, and this person is still at large. So it is important that people know about this young girl. And again, I'm going to put her picture up more so you can really recognize this, how sweet this young girl was. She's so beautiful, and it's just so tragic and so sad to know that she lost her life at just 7, going to see somebody she really loved and she really admired. Has people seen any witnesses? Now, let me go into the witnesses bit, because this is kind of key, and there's been lots of witnesses, but no witnesses. It's really weird. So a friend of Christine's who is 15 years old, saw her with an older grey man, an older man who was grey, I should say, and she waved at Christine and Christine waved back. So she didn't seem like she was really in any distress. But her friend said that was a bit weird that she was with this person that she didn't really recognise. But Christine seemed okay, so she didn't think nothing of it. So she just went about her business, and then she just said, I don't think there was no problem. So when she found out that Christine was murdered, that's when she stepped forward and she told police about the situation. When I said about her friend who she waved to, she mentioned that she was approached by 2 men, an elderly man and a man who was young, but he had grey hair. And these 2 people asked her to come and sit with them under a tree. But she was like, it's a bit cagey, so she said no, and she just left. But then she said if she saw the men again, or the man with Christine, that she would always recognise this man, who obviously was last seen with Let's Christine. Just talk about the Star and Garter Hotel. Now, the Star and Garter Hotel where Sugar Ray was staying, there was actual footage and filming and pictures taken. There was 3 films that was out, which the police had hold of. One was from Sugar Ray Robinson's wife, and one was from another spectator, and there was also one from a TV channel, and some of them were in colour, I believe, which is the TV channel which filmed the actual event. And I believe it is said, from what my notes is telling me and what I've researched and some of the sources I've seen, that actual Christine was actually on some of those videos. But obviously the police wanted all these videos, all the pictures taken that day, to see if there was anyone standing with her, if, you know, like someone had their hand on her shoulder, like to say that she's with me. So, you know, is what you do if you was a parent kind of thing, in order to see this random young girl standing in a massive group of people. So, but unfortunately nothing came of it, which is really, really sad, and it is really, really frustrating. I thought at least something could be found, but there was nothing found whatsoever. 100 people came forward, giving all the pictures over and all the photographic evidence, and I mentioned nothing came of it. However, there was, after the police appeal, a coach driver said that he was parked in the parking lot. It's like an open space, and she saw Christine with the doll walking past, roughly about, with holding a doll, roughly about 4 p.m. Which he said was a bit odd, because he said he just saw this little girl wandering by. But obviously Christine knew the area, you know, she was 7, so she pretty much knew where she lived. The sighting of Christine was by a woman, which was at 407. And I'll refer back to this actual alleyway later on, because it's quite important. She said that she saw Christine walking down from the high street through this alleyway, which leads to the river. Now, the high street I know very well, and I know this alleyway because the alleyway goes past the Star and Garter Hotel. So the Star and Garter Hotel is on my left, and now you've got another pub and some other shops like a McDonald's and all that on the right. But as you go through, the alleyway still there. You can walk through, and then it goes down some steps, and it goes out to the like a green area, and you've got a tennis section over there, and some other bits and pieces where you can sit and have picnics. So that area which you can walk through is still there today. And it's really odd, because when I used to walk down there, I always felt really, really eerie. It felt not, all right, you can say it's an alleyway, and it is really, really eerie, this alleyway, but it is just eerie. There's a feeling about it, but I'll come back to that, because it is important, because there is a lot of information the police really wanted to home in on this alleyway, and people that were seen and was around that alleyway, which they were a few suspects that they wanted to speak to. From my police reports, which I've seen, the police have said that Christine was taken away and then brought back, because remember, from the day she was killed, there was 2 days, and her body was found on the second day. So what they must have done was taken her away, and then brought her back, and probably going to let her go, and they must have murdered her. But according to the police, what I can see here and what I've researched, the police have said that she was taken away, and then she must have been returned. On the 17th of July 1951, the police made an appeal for 4 people to come forward, and I'm going to talk about this alleyway, which is at the side of the Star and Garter, which I mentioned. And they wanted to speak to 4 Pacific people, actually 4 Pacific people. And I'm just going to read this out to you. A man aged between 20 to 25, 5 foot 11 inches, well built, wearing a sandy coloured jacket, and also with grey flannel trousers. A woman and child with no description, and another woman and child with no description. A man aged 40 to 45, 5'9", medium to stocky build, clean shaven. That's people that the police wanted to interview about this alleyway. That's what I'm saying is quite important. Now the alleyway, again, as I said, she was seen walking down this alleyway by the last known person to see Christine. On Sunday, the 8th of July 1951, it appears that Sugar Ray did not actually make his appearance. He did not come out and talk to people. And this is important, because there was reports that someone came, there was a conversation heard that one man said to another that, I hope Turpin gives him a good hiding, and the man responded by saying, don't worry, he will. Now, Christine would have heard that conversation. She was either in the alleyway or not far from the alleyway, because so she was down that actual alleyway at that time. And the alleyway is called dead slow alley or death trap alleyway. And it's synonymous with local people. That's what local people call it. So this alleyway was a shortcut from the high street to the actual river, which is the River Thames, which runs along the past the castle. And obviously that's where back in the day, back in the Tudor times, they used to take the barges and in order to travel. That was a mode of travel or transport. So the river and castles were built close to the river. So on Sunday, the 15th of July at 5 to 5:30 p.m., they've done a reenactment of Christine, and in order to jog some memories. Now, apparently there was 30,000 that turned out to support this actual case, but unfortunately nothing came from it. But interesting enough, the police said there was around 1,000 people around the 4-acre meadows where she was found. But again, this is where she was murdered and nobody saw anything. I mean, really, nobody could see or hear or realize that this little girl was laying there, you know, or with this man who would be totally different age. So nobody reports or said they saw anything, which is really, really frustrating. And of course, my heart would go out to her mum and her family, who obviously lost such a young, beautiful soul, and it couldn't have been easy for them to deal with. But there was some good news. There was a person of interest, and I'm going to read out what the person looked like. He would have been 5'10" to 5'11" inches, around 35 years old, fair hair, brushed back, so coming back, clean shaven. He's complex with reddish. Oh, his complexion. Sorry, complexion was reddish, so he may have been like red, so probably really warm looking. And he was dressed in a plain navy suit with no hat. So now let me just explain why you keep hearing me say no hat and hat. You're probably gonna hear that as I go on. Now, in them days, people always wore hats. They just always did. It was a part of it. You were always in a suit, or you was always in a jacket, but you always had a hat. It was a gentleman's thing how you dressed. And if you didn't have a hat, then it was really weird that you was not seen. That is why it's so important when they make comments like this, because people would recognize somebody without a hat. Or any young kids, even young kids had hats. And I remember my dad always said you should always have a cap, or you should always have a hat, because, you know, it keeps just in case it rains. But he's from that generation, so he would have been at that time, you know, wearing a hat and things of that nature, though he's from the Caribbean. But that's what's so important, why if you hear anything around the 1950s and they say, oh, the person, or the 1940s, and the person wasn't wearing a hat, that's why it's so important. And that's something I came across, which I thought, why is that? And I remember speaking to someone kind of older who said, we always wore hats. We always wore hats in them days. So that's what I thought was quite interesting. So that was a learn for me. But this didn't lead to anything, which is really frustrating, but they had a person of interest, which they never obviously found. So the pathologist believed, obviously, which I mentioned, that she was strangled on the actual day she died, but then it defeats the theory. So they must have murdered her and taken her away. Why not just leave her there? But anyway, they believed that she was murdered on the 8th of July, 1951, with the cord, well, I should say with a belt tied around her neck and tightened. But then they must have taken her away and then brought her back again and left for her to be found, which I think is a bit peculiar, but that's what the police say from what I can understand of what they were saying. Now, a bit of information about Christine's mum. Now, Christine's mum said that it's inconceivable that Christine would have went with a stranger, because Christine it was drilled into Christine not to go with strangers anywhere, and Christine knew that. Which, if we were to look at her mother's theory, you know, and most of the cases of murder is done by people that we know. If what her mum said is correct, and Christine didn't go off with someone she didn't know, she would have been murdered by someone she did know. And this sheds a whole new light on the whole situation, but I don't know if this will follow through. Clearly not, because obviously the person's still at large. Friday, the 21st of September 1951, Christine's inquest verdict was by murder by someone or some persons. So it is confirmed that she was murdered by somebody or some people or group of people, but there is no other foul play involved in that, i.e. there's no sexual element to it and anything of that nature. So the police took over 1,800 statements. Now, there was an interesting theory here, or there was a link they believed could be true to another murder of a 5-year-old girl called Brenda Goddard, which took place in Bath. But because she was killed on the 15th of July and he found the murderer quickly after, they ruled it out and said there's no way it could be linked. Now, I think we go on dangerous ground when we start trying to link in different serial killers or killers and murders to different murders. I know there has to be an MO, or there has to be some kind of link. So there has to be like a way of killing in order to link them all. But just because it's a little girl and it's small town, it doesn't mean that necessarily it's going to be the same person. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It could happen. Sometimes it could be just someone in the family who's killed this poor girl. Or it could be that there'd be someone going around killing young kids. But it's important that we look at it, but not to be consumed by it. And I think people were trying to relate a lot of things. In the other aspect as well, I saw was that the Hampshire police and the RAF constables were going into some woods in the east somewhere near Andover, looking for a man who apparently pulled a gun on a 7-year-old, and who's also another man pulled a gun on a 7-year-old and 11-year-old and a 10-year-old. And the Wiltshire police obviously reported this and were searching for the man, and a 12-year-old, and this has also happened to a 12-year-old in South Wrexham on a Tuesday. So there was this people going around trying to call some, and they were trying to thinking, well, maybe this is the same person. But they could not find a link to this investigation or to these people, which kind of like came out kind of stale. And it's really tough. I mean, what do you think? What do you guys think? What do you feel that they could be linked? Do you think that maybe Christine was murdered by somebody in the village that knew her and had the opportunity to do it at that time? Do you feel that maybe that someone who wasn't local came in to Windsor at that time when Sugar was here, that took her away and then harmed her and then just dumped her body? But again, remember, according to the police, that the person came and dumped her body back 2 days later. So she was murdered on one day and they found her body 2 days later. So, but she was killed at the scene, apparently. So she may be there, killed at the scene, and taken away, then brought back. I'm not sure. What do you guys think? Do you feel that maybe there is links to other serial killing murders? Do you think that people had the opportunity, maybe the person who was doing the killings in the places like South Wrexham was up in Windsor and then saw this little girl and then had the opportunity to take her? But I don't know, let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. I'm welcoming all comments, and how I can improve the channel. This one is really dear to me. It really is upsetting, having a grandkid who is 7 as well, a young girl grandkid as well. So it's tough. It is tough, and I just want, obviously, with parents, please keep an eye on your children, because we have cameras out there, we have safety, we have people that be there with us, but it's teaching your children, as I taught mine, safety, and you feeling afraid or followed, find a local place you can go to get some help, find a policeman, whatever. But just please reinforce your children that there are bad men out there. They don't all walk around in flasher max or like tan color flasher max, like, you know, back in the day we were told when we were growing up. They just as normal people, and you won't know the difference. So and again, they also do trafficking, children trafficking. So be safe out there, people. Please be safe. Definitely leave comments below, and please like, share and subscribe. As I said, I haven't found no video based on poor Christine Butcher, so please do share this. So, and remember, she wasn't the medal wasn't found, so maybe we can kind of regenerate it all again to see if this cold case can be looked at. So I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe and look after yourself.